Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a single penny, and discovering that the tiny coin in your hand might be worth far more than 1 cent. It sounds unbelievable, but for some collectors, this exact moment has happened. Hidden among billions of ordinary coins are a few that carry surprising value, and one of the most talked about examples is the 1964 D Lincoln penny. At first glance, the 1964 D Lincoln penny looks like any other copper coin. It has the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Millions of Americans used this coin for everyday purchases during the 1960s. It passed through grocery stores, gas stations, and cash registers across the country. Yet today, certain versions of this simple penny have captured the attention of collectors who carefully examine every detail. To understand why this coin matters, we need to step back to the early 1960s. The United States was going through a time of major change. President John F. Kennedy had recently been assassinated in 1963, and the nation was in a period of mourning and transition. At the same time, the U.S. Mint was producing enormous numbers of coins because demand for everyday change was rising quickly. In 1964 alone, the Denver Mint struck more than 3 billion Lincoln pennies. That number sounds huge, and it is. The mint mark D, located just below the date on the front of the coin, shows that the coin was produced at the Denver Mint in Colorado. Because so many were made, most people assume these pennies must be extremely common and not worth much at all. And in many cases, that assumption is correct. Most 1964 D pennies you find in circulation are only worth a few cents today. But hidden among those billions are special examples that collectors search for with great excitement. The Lincoln penny design itself had already been in use for more than 50 years by 1964. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. It was the first time a real historical figure appeared on a circulating U.S. coin. On the back of the coin, the Lincoln Memorial design was introduced in 1959 to celebrate Lincoln's 150th birthday. If you look closely at the memorial on the reverse, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside the building. It's a remarkable detail that many people never notice. The metal composition of the 1964 penny is another important feature. These coins were made primarily of copper, with a composition of about 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. Because of this high copper content, older pennies like the 1964 version have a rich reddish-brown color when they are well preserved. This copper composition is especially interesting because only 1 year later, in 1965, the U.S. Mint began changing the metal content of coins due to rising copper prices. While pennies continued to use mostly copper for some years, many other coins were redesigned with different metals. That makes pre-1965 coins part of the final era of traditional American coinage. But what truly makes certain 1964 D Lincoln pennies valuable is not just their age or their metal. The real excitement comes from rare varieties, minting errors, and coins that survived in exceptional condition. One of the most sought-after characteristics collectors look for is the condition of the coin. In coin collecting, condition is everything. A penny that spent decades in circulation may be worn down, darkened, and scratched. But a coin that was carefully stored right after it was minted might still have its original shine. Collectors describe the best-preserved coins as mint state. These coins look almost exactly the way they did the day they left the mint. A 1964 D penny in average circulated condition might be worth just a few cents. But a brilliant red example in near-perfect mint state condition can be worth hundreds of dollars. There are also rare minting errors that make certain 1964 D pennies especially valuable. Mint errors occur when something unusual happens during the coin production process. Sometimes a coin is struck slightly off-center. Other times, the die that stamps the design onto the coin has a flaw. One well-known type of error collectors search for is a doubled die. This happens when the design is accidentally stamped twice at slightly different angles, creating a noticeable doubling in the letters or numbers on the coin. When this type of error appears on a 1964 D penny, it can make the coin far more desirable to collectors. Another fascinating variety involves repunched mint marks. In the 1960s, mint marks were often added to coins by hand punching the letter into the die. If the punch moved slightly during the process, the mint mark could appear doubled or misaligned. A repunched D mint mark on a 1964 penny can make collectors take a much closer look. Over the years, several high-quality 1964 D pennies have appeared in auctions and private sales. While most examples are modest in value, the finest known coins have sold for impressive prices. A pristine red 1964 D Lincoln penny graded at the highest levels by professional grading services has sold for hundreds, and in rare cases even over $1,000 depending on the exact grade and eye appeal. For many collectors, the thrill is not just about the price. It is about the hunt. Imagine searching through jars of old pennies, inherited coin collections, or even pocket change, hoping to find a hidden gem that others overlooked. If you want to check whether you have a valuable 1964 D penny, there are a few simple things to look for. First, check the date and mint mark carefully. The date 1964 should appear on the front of the coin, and just below it you should see a small letter D, indicating it was minted in Denver. Next, examine the coin's color and condition. Coins that still have a bright reddish color are generally more desirable than those that have turned dark brown. Scratches, heavy wear, or damage will reduce the coin's value, while sharp details and original shine increase it. You should also look closely at the lettering and numbers. If you notice unusual doubling, strange spacing, or anything that looks slightly different from a normal penny, the coin might be worth further inspection by an expert. Another helpful step is using a magnifying glass or a simple coin loop. Many collectors use magnification to inspect tiny details that are difficult to see with the naked eye. Sometimes the smallest difference can turn an ordinary penny into a collectible variety. Of course, whenever a coin becomes valuable, there is always the possibility of counterfeits or altered coins. Some people attempt to add a fake mint mark to a regular coin in hopes of increasing its value. Because of this, serious collectors often rely on professional coin grading services to authenticate important coins. These services examine the coin under high magnification, confirm that it is genuine, and assign it a grade based on its condition. Once graded and sealed in a protective holder, the coin becomes easier to buy, sell, and trade among collectors. Beyond its potential value, the 1964 D Lincoln penny also holds a special place in American history. It represents a moment when coins were still made with traditional copper alloys and when minting technology was transitioning toward more modern methods. It also reminds us how something small and ordinary can carry a much larger story. Every coin passes through countless hands, witnessing everyday life along the way. A single penny might have traveled across states, sat in cash drawers, or been saved in piggy banks for decades. One surprising fact about the Lincoln penny series is that it has been produced longer than any other coin design in American history. Since 1909, Lincoln's portrait has remained on the penny through multiple design changes and generations of collectors. Another fun detail is that billions of people have held Lincoln pennies without realizing how many different varieties exist. Some collectors spend years studying tiny differences in lettering, mint marks, and die variations. For many hobbyists, coin collecting begins exactly this way, with curiosity about a single coin. Someone notices an unusual date or mint mark, starts researching, and before long discovers an entire world of history and hidden treasures. The 1964 D Lincoln penny is a perfect example of that journey. While most examples remain simple 1-cent coins, a few stand out because of their condition, their rarity, or their unique minting characteristics. Those special pieces become the treasures that collectors dream about finding. And that is what makes coin collecting so fascinating. You never know when an ordinary object might reveal an extraordinary story. A coin that once bought a piece of candy in 1964 could now be a carefully preserved collectible sitting in a display case. So the next time you see a penny dated 1964 with a small D under the year, take a closer look. Examine its color. Check its details. You might just be holding a small piece of history that has traveled through more than half a century of American life. Because sometimes, the most valuable discoveries are not locked away in vaults or museums. Sometimes they are hiding in plain sight, waiting quietly in jars of old coins, forgotten collections, or even the spare change in your pocket. And who knows? The next remarkable coin discovery might start with a single penny that almost no one thought to look at twice. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering that the tiny copper coin in your hand might actually hold a hidden story that collectors have been quietly searching for. Most people see a penny and think it's worth exactly 1 cent. But sometimes, the smallest coins carry details that turn them into something far more interesting. Today we're taking a closer look at one of those coins, the 1981 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that millions of Americans have handled without realizing the history and collector interest behind it. The 1981 Lincoln penny is part of one of the most famous coin series in American history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. For decades, it has remained one of the most recognizable coins in circulation across the United States. By the time 1981 arrived, the Lincoln penny had already been part of everyday American life for more than 70 years. The coin we're talking about today is the 1981 penny with no mint mark. At first glance, this might sound unusual. Many people believe that if a coin has no mint mark, it must be rare. But the truth is more interesting than that. In the United States, coins are produced at several different mint facilities. The most well-known are Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Most coins include a small letter on the front called a mint mark, which shows where the coin was produced. A D represents Denver, and an S represents San Francisco. But for many years, coins produced at the Philadelphia Mint did not carry any mint mark at all. That means if you find a 1981 Lincoln penny without a mint mark, it was made in Philadelphia in 1981. The Philadelphia Mint produced an enormous number of pennies. In fact, more than 7 billion Lincoln cents were struck that year in Philadelphia alone. Because of this, the coin itself is not considered rare in ordinary condition. However, that does not mean every 1981 penny is just pocket change. To understand why collectors still search for this coin, we have to look at the design and the time period in which it was made. On the front of the coin, you see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln. This design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and first appeared in 1909. Lincoln faces to the right with the word Liberty placed to the left side of the portrait. Above his head are the words "In God We Trust," and the date appears to the right. The reverse side of the coin in 1981 still featured the classic wheat replacement design known as the Lincoln Memorial. This design had been used since 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The Lincoln Memorial appears in the center, with the words United States of America along the top and 1 cent at the bottom. If you look very closely, you can even see a tiny image of the Lincoln statue inside the memorial. Another interesting detail about the 1981 penny is the metal used to make it. At that time, the coin was still made mostly of copper. The composition was about 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This gives the coin its rich brown or reddish color when new. But 1981 sits right at the edge of an important change in American coinage. Rising metal prices were making copper coins expensive to produce. Just 1 year later, in 1982, the United States Mint switched to a new composition using mostly zinc with only a thin copper coating. Because of this, 1981 represents one of the final years of the classic copper Lincoln cent. Collectors often appreciate coins that mark the end of an era, and this helps keep interest alive for 1981 pennies today. Now here's where things get more exciting for collectors. While most 1981 pennies are common, certain varieties and high-quality examples can still bring surprising prices. Coins are graded based on their condition. A penny that has been heavily used in circulation might show scratches, fading, and worn details. But occasionally, a coin survives in near-perfect condition with sharp lines and original shine. These high-grade coins are known as mint state examples. Even if a coin was originally made in huge numbers, finding one in flawless condition decades later can be surprisingly difficult. For example, certified high-grade 1981 no-mint mark pennies have sold for hundreds of dollars in the collector market. Some examples graded MS-67 or higher by professional grading services have reached values around several $100s at auction. The reason is simple. While billions were produced, very few remain in truly perfect condition after more than 40 years. Collectors are also interested in possible mint errors. Mint errors happen when something unusual occurs during the production process. This might include off-center strikes, double images in the lettering, or coins struck on the wrong type of metal. Although rare, some 1981 pennies have been discovered with small doubling effects in the letters or numbers. These varieties can attract attention from collectors who specialize in error coins. Because of these possibilities, Many people still examine their pennies closely, hoping to spot something unusual. So how can you tell if you have a genuine 1981 penny with no mint mark? First, check the front of the coin near the date. If there is no small letter beneath the year, that means the coin was struck in Philadelphia. Next, look carefully at the color and weight of the coin. A genuine copper 1981 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. It should also have that familiar copper tone, ranging from bright red when new to dark brown after years of circulation. Collectors also pay attention to the surface details. Strong lines in Lincoln's hair, sharp lettering, and minimal scratches can indicate a higher quality coin. If a coin appears unusually clean or well-preserved, it might be worth having it examined by a professional coin grading service. Another fun fact about the 1981 penny is how it represents a transitional moment in U.S. coin history. Within just 1 year, the metal composition of the penny would change dramatically. The copper coins of the early 1980s would slowly disappear from circulation as newer zinc versions took their place. Because of this, some collectors enjoy setting aside copper pennies from years like 1981 simply as historical pieces from the final chapter of the traditional bronze cent. There's also a psychological reason pennies like this remain fascinating. People love the idea that everyday objects might hold hidden value. A coin that looks ordinary could still have a story behind it, or a condition that makes it more desirable to collectors. And sometimes those discoveries really do happen. Stories occasionally appear about someone finding an overlooked coin in an old jar, a piggy bank, or a forgotten drawer. While most pennies remain worth 1 cent, the possibility that one could be worth far more keeps collectors and hobbyists searching. The 1981 no-mint mark Lincoln penny may not be the rarest coin in American history, but it represents something important in the world of coin collecting. It's a reminder that history, craftsmanship, and economics all come together in even the smallest pieces of currency. Every line on the coin was carefully engraved. Every piece of metal was struck by powerful presses at the United States Mint. And every coin entered circulation as part of everyday life across the country. More than 40 years later, many of those same pennies are still out there, quietly moving from hand to hand. Collectors continue to search for the best preserved examples, hoping to find one with exceptional quality or a rare mint error. So the next time you see a 1981 penny without a mint mark, take a moment to look at it more closely. Notice the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the small details in the memorial, and the copper color that represents the final era before the zinc transition. It may just be a simple coin. Or it could be a small piece of American history that has been traveling through decades of pockets, cash registers, and coin jars. And sometimes, the most ordinary coins turn out to be the ones with the most interesting stories waiting to be discovered. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a single penny, and almost ignoring it. It looks ordinary, just another copper-colored coin among many. But what if that small coin was quietly hiding a story that collectors across America find fascinating? What if that penny, minted in 1988 without a mint mark, could actually be worth far more than 1 cent? Today we are going to explore the intriguing world of the 1988 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that may seem simple at first glance but carries history, mystery, and surprising value. The 1988 Lincoln penny is part of one of the most famous coin series in the United States. The Lincoln cent first appeared in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. It was the first regular circulating U.S. coin to feature a real person. Designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner, the coin shows Lincoln's portrait on the front, while the reverse design used for many decades displayed 2 wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent. However, by 1988, the design on the back had already changed. Since 1959, the Lincoln penny had featured the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse side. This design shows the famous monument in Washington, D.C., and if you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial. That level of detail has always amazed collectors. Now let's talk about what no mint mark actually means. In the United States, coins are produced at several different mint facilities. Each mint usually places a small letter, called a mint mark, on the coin to show where it was made. For example, a D stands for the Denver Mint, and an S represents the San Francisco Mint. But pennies made in Philadelphia historically did not carry a mint mark for many years. That means if you find a 1988 penny without any letter under the date, it was most likely produced at the Philadelphia Mint. In 1988, the Philadelphia Mint struck billions of Lincoln pennies to keep up with the need for everyday change across the country. Even though billions were produced, collectors still pay attention to these coins because of small details, production variations, and possible minting errors. Sometimes those tiny differences can make a coin far more interesting than its face value suggests. The 1988 Lincoln penny has a composition that reflects an important change in U.S. coin production. Before 1982, pennies were mostly made of copper. But because copper prices increased, the U.S. Mint switched to a different metal mix in 1982. By 1988, pennies were primarily made of zinc with a thin outer layer of copper. This means the coin looks copper on the outside but is mostly zinc inside. Because of this metal change, the coin weighs about 2.5 grams, which is lighter than the older copper pennies that weighed about 3.11 grams. This difference might seem small, but it represents a major shift in how U.S. coins were manufactured. On the front of the 1988 penny, you will see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing to the right. Above his head is the word liberty. To the right of Lincoln appears the phrase, "In God we trust." And just below the portrait sits the date, 1988. If there is no letter beneath the date, you have the Philadelphia version. Turn the coin over and you will see the Lincoln Memorial. The words United States of America appear along the top edge. The motto E pluribus unum sits above the memorial, and the denomination 1 cent appears at the bottom at first glance. It may seem like there is nothing unusual about this design, but collectors have discovered something fascinating about certain 1988 pennies. One of the most talked about varieties is known as the 1988 reverse of 1989. This variety occurs when a coin is struck using a reverse design that actually belongs to the following year. In other words, the back of the coin shows small design differences that were intended for the 1989 pennies. These differences are extremely subtle, and most people would never notice them without magnification. The shape of certain letters in the phrase United States of America, especially the letter G in FG, which represents the designer Frank Gasparo, can reveal whether the coin has the unusual reverse. When collectors first began identifying this variety, excitement spread quickly throughout the coin community. Discovering that a small number of 1988 pennies were struck with the reverse intended for 1989 added a new layer of mystery to this otherwise common coin. Because these coins are so difficult to spot, many people may have them without even realizing it. Now let's talk about value. A typical 1988 no-mint mark penny in circulated condition is usually worth only a few cents. That may sound disappointing, but the story changes when we start talking about coins in exceptional condition or those with rare varieties. Uncirculated coins, which show no wear and still retain their original mint shine, can sometimes sell for several dollars or more depending on their quality. Coins graded at the highest levels by professional grading companies can sell for significantly higher prices. But the real excitement comes from the rare varieties and error coins. For example, the 1988 reverse of 1989 variety has been known to sell for hundreds of dollars when authenticated by professional grading services. In some cases, high-grade examples have sold for even more at auction. Collectors are always searching for these subtle differences because they represent unusual moments in the minting process. A simple change in dies or production timing can create a collectible treasure. Another reason collectors examine 1988 pennies closely is the possibility of mint errors. Errors can occur when something unusual happens during the striking process. Examples include double strikes, off-center strikes, or doubled letters and numbers. Although these errors are rare, when they do appear, they can greatly increase the value of a coin. Some Lincoln penny errors from different years have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on their rarity and condition. If you want to check whether your 1988 penny might be valuable, there are a few simple steps you can follow. First, look closely under the date to confirm there is no mint mark. If there is no letter, it likely came from the Philadelphia Mint. Next, examine the overall condition of the coin. Coins with fewer scratches, sharper details, and original shine tend to be more desirable. Then take a closer look at the reverse design. Compare the lettering and details with images of known varieties, especially the 1988 reverse of 1989 version. A magnifying glass or coin loop can help reveal tiny differences. Finally, if you believe you have found something unusual, professional grading services can authenticate and grade the coin. This process can confirm whether the coin is genuine and help determine its true market value. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 1988 Lincoln penny. For example, billions were produced, yet collectors still examine them carefully because even common coins can hide rare varieties. Many valuable discoveries have come from ordinary pocket change. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln penny remains one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. While the reverse has changed several times over the years, Lincoln's portrait has appeared on the front since 1909. That means generations of Americans have carried these coins in their pockets, jars, and piggy banks without always realizing the history they hold. Collectors love the 1988 penny not because it is extremely rare, but because it represents the thrill of the hunt. The possibility that a subtle variety or hidden error could be waiting in a handful of loose change keeps coin enthusiasts searching. Sometimes the most exciting discoveries come from coins that millions of people overlook every day. Imagine checking a jar of old pennies that has been sitting on a shelf for years. Among those coins might be a small copper-colored piece with the date 1988. At first glance, it seems completely ordinary, but with a closer look, it could reveal a detail that turns it into a collectible piece of numismatic history. This sense of discovery is what makes coin collecting so fascinating. Every coin tells a story about the time when it was made, the technology used to produce it, and the journey it has taken through countless hands. The 1988 no-mint mark Lincoln penny may not look extraordinary, but its connection to mint varieties, production changes, and collector curiosity gives it a special place in the world of coins. So the next time you receive a penny and change, take a moment to look at it closely. Check the date. Look for the mint mark. Examine the design. Because sometimes the smallest coins can hold the biggest surprises. And somewhere out there, another overlooked 1988 penny may still be waiting to reveal its hidden story. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a single penny, and realizing that this tiny copper coin might hold a surprising story. Most people see a penny and think it is almost worthless. But sometimes, an ordinary-looking coin can carry history, mystery, and even unexpected value. Today, we are taking a closer look at the 1991 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that millions of people have handled, yet very few have ever truly examined. The 1991 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. It was also the first regular United States coin to feature a real historical figure rather than a symbolic image. Since then, generations of Americans have carried Lincoln pennies in their pockets, jars, and piggy banks. When we talk about a 1991 penny with no mint mark, many people immediately assume something is missing or that the coin might be in error. But in reality, the absence of a mint mark usually tells us something very specific about where the coin was made. In 1991, pennies were produced at several United States mint facilities. Coins made in Denver carried a small D mint mark under the date. Coins made in San Francisco were usually proof coins intended for collectors and carried an S mint mark. But pennies produced at the Philadelphia Mint did not use a mint mark during that time. So when you see a 1991 penny without any letter under the date, it typically means it was struck in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Mint has a long and important history. Established in 1792, it was the first official mint in the United States. For many decades, coins from Philadelphia did not carry any mint mark at all. This tradition continued for pennies for many years, which is why the 1991 penny without a mint mark is actually quite common in everyday circulation. But even common coins can become interesting when collectors start looking closely. The 1991 Lincoln penny features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front. This design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and has remained one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. Lincoln faces to the right, with the word Liberty placed behind his shoulder and the phrase "In God We Trust" appearing above his head. The year 1991 is stamped clearly in front of Lincoln's portrait. The reverse side of the coin features the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look carefully at the Lincoln Memorial design, you can actually see a tiny image of Abraham Lincoln seated inside the building. This makes the Lincoln cent one of the few coins in the world to show the same person on both sides of the coin. The metal composition of the 1991 penny is another interesting detail. By this time, pennies were no longer made mostly of copper. Earlier Lincoln cents were composed primarily of copper, but rising metal prices led to a major change in 1982. Starting that year, most pennies were made from a core of zinc coated with a thin layer of copper. The 1991 penny follows this same formula, containing about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper on the surface. This gave the coin its familiar copper color while keeping production costs lower. At first glance, the 1991 no-mint mark penny might seem like just another ordinary coin. After all, the United States Mint produced billions of pennies in 1991. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck more than 4 billion Lincoln cents that year. With numbers like that, it is easy to assume that none of them could be rare. However, collectors know that rarity does not always come from low mintage numbers. Sometimes, the real value of a coin comes from small variations, unusual errors, or exceptionally well-preserved examples. Over the years, collectors have discovered several interesting varieties among 1991 Lincoln pennies. One example that has attracted attention is the possibility of double die errors. A double die occurs when the coin die used to strike coins receives a misaligned impression during its creation. This can cause certain letters or numbers to appear slightly doubled on the finished coin. While dramatic double dies are rare for the 1991 penny, some minor varieties have been reported by collectors who carefully examine the date or lettering under magnification. Another type of collectible example involves off-center strikes. Occasionally, a blank coin planchet does not sit perfectly in place when it is struck by the coin press. When this happens, part of the design may appear shifted or missing. Off-center coins can be very appealing to collectors, especially when the date. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and almost tossing it aside without a second thought. Now imagine discovering that this small copper coin, something millions of people ignore every day, might actually be worth far more than 1 cent. Today we're talking about a coin that many people have seen but very few truly understand. The 1994 Lincoln penny with no mint mark may look ordinary at first glance, but once you start exploring its story, its details, and the rare variations collectors search for, it becomes a lot more interesting than you might expect. The 1994 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. Before that time, American coins rarely featured real people, but Lincoln's image quickly became a symbol recognized across the country. By 1994, the Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for 85 years, making it one of the most familiar coins in American pockets. When you see a 1994 penny with no mint mark, it simply means the coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. For many years, the Philadelphia Mint did not include a mint mark on pennies, so coins made their appear blank below the date. In 1994, billions of Lincoln cents were produced, and a large number came from Philadelphia. That's why the no mint mark version is the one most commonly found in everyday circulation. Even though the coin is common, it still carries the classic design that collectors have loved for generations. On the front of the coin, you see the portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing to the right. The word "Liberty" appears to the left of his portrait, and the phrase "In God We Trust" is displayed across the top. Just beneath the date, on coins made in other mints, you might see a small letter such as D for Denver. But on the 1994 Philadelphia penny, that space remains empty. The back of the coin features the famous Lincoln Memorial design. This design was introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. At the center of the coin stands the Lincoln Memorial Building in Washington, D.C. If you look closely with a magnifying glass, you can actually see the tiny statue of Abraham Lincoln sitting inside the memorial between the columns. It's one of the smallest detailed elements ever placed on a circulating American coin. In terms of materials, the 1994 Lincoln penny is not made entirely of copper like the earliest Lincoln cents. Since 1982, most pennies have been made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and has a diameter of 19 millimeters. This change in metal helped reduce the cost of producing pennies while maintaining their familiar copper appearance. Now here's where things become more interesting for collectors. While millions of 1994 pennies exist, certain versions of this coin can be far more valuable than 1 cent. The difference often comes down to condition and rare minting errors. One of the most important factors in coin collecting is grade. Coins that look brand new, with sharp details and bright original surfaces, are called uncirculated. These coins were never heavily used in everyday transactions. When a 1994 no-mint mark penny survives in near-perfect condition, collectors begin to take notice. Professional grading services sometimes rate coins on a scale from 1 to 70. A coin graded around MS65 or higher is considered extremely well preserved. In these conditions, even a common coin can become desirable to collectors building high-quality collections. For example, ordinary circulated 1994 pennies might only be worth 1 or 2 cents. But an uncirculated 1994 no-mint mark penny graded MS67 has sold for much higher prices in the collector market. In some recorded sales, examples in exceptional condition have reached values ranging from several $100s to over $1,000, depending on their quality and eye appeal. Another reason collectors study this coin carefully is the possibility of mint errors. Mint errors happen when something unusual occurs during the striking process at the mint. These mistakes can create coins that look slightly different from normal pieces, and those differences can make them rare. One type of error collectors watch for is a doubled die. This occurs when the design on the coin appears slightly doubled, especially on the date or letters. The doubling happens during the creation of the coin's die, the metal tool that stamps the design onto blank coins. When this error appears clearly, collectors may pay significant amounts for such coins. Off-center strikes are another fascinating error. Sometimes the coin blank is not perfectly positioned when it is struck, leaving part of the design missing and creating a crescent-shaped blank area. Coins like this look unusual and often attract strong interest from collectors. There are also cases where coins are struck on the wrong type of metal planchet. Imagine pulling a simple penny from your pocket change, the kind most people ignore or toss into a jar. Now imagine that same tiny coin quietly holding a story of American history, massive production numbers, surprising collector demand, and in some rare cases, values far beyond 1 cent. Today we're exploring a coin many people have seen but few have truly looked at closely, the 1997 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny. And by the end of the story, you may start checking every penny you find. The 1997 D. Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced at the Denver Mint in the year 1997. At first glance, it looks like every other modern penny circulating in the United States. The familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln faces right on the front of the coin, while the back shows the classic Lincoln Memorial design. Millions of Americans handled this coin in everyday transactions, from grocery stores to vending machines, rarely thinking twice about it. But as with many coins in American history, the deeper story begins when collectors start asking questions. How many were made? Are there rare versions? And could one sitting in a forgotten jar actually be worth more than its face value? To understand the 1997 D penny, we first need to step back into the long history of the Lincoln cent itself. The Lincoln penny first appeared in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. The design on the front was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, whose portrait of Lincoln became one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. For decades, the reverse side of the penny showed 2 wheat stalks, which is why older pennies are often called wheat cents. But in 1959, the United States Mint introduced a new reverse design featuring the Lincoln Memorial. This design was created by engraver Frank Gasparo, and it remained on pennies all the way until 2008 by the time 1997 arrived. The Lincoln Memorial penny had already been circulating for nearly 40 years. It was familiar, trusted, and produced in enormous quantities to keep up with everyday commerce. In 1997, the Denver Mint struck more than 4.3 billion Lincoln pennies. That number alone tells you something important. The coin itself is not rare in the traditional sense. Billions were produced, meaning many still exist today in circulation or stored in coin jars across the country. However, collectors know that rarity is not always about how many were made. Sometimes the real value comes from condition, errors, and unique characteristics that only appear on a small number of coins. Let's look closely at the coin itself. The front of the 1997 D penny features the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, facing right. Above his head is the word Liberty. To the right appears the year 1997, along with the small letter D. indicating it was minted in Denver. The phrase "In God We Trust" curves along the top edge. The reverse side shows the Lincoln Memorial Building in Washington, D.C. If you look very closely at the center of the memorial, you can actually see a tiny image of Lincoln's statue inside the building. It's one of the most fascinating hidden details in American coin design. The words "United States of America" appear across the top of the reverse, while 1 cent is boldly written across the bottom. Now let's talk about what the coin is made of, because this often surprises people. Before 1982, pennies were made mostly of copper, but rising copper prices forced the U.S. Mint to change the composition. By 1997, the Lincoln penny was made primarily of zinc, with a very thin copper coating on the outside. The coin contains about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. This change made pennies cheaper to produce, but it also created new types of mint errors and surface issues that collectors sometimes find on coins from the 1980s and 1990s. And this brings us to one of the most exciting parts of modern coin collecting: mint errors. Although billions of 1997 D pennies were produced, a small number left the mint with mistakes. These errors are what truly capture the attention of collectors. One example is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin blank is not perfectly aligned during the minting process. As a result, part of the design may be missing, leaving a blank curved space on one side of the coin. Another possible error is a broad strike. In this case, the coin is struck without the collar that normally holds it in place, causing the coin to spread outward and appear slightly larger than normal. Collectors have also discovered die cracks on some 1997 D pennies. These occur when the metal dies used to stamp the coins develop small fractures. When a cracked die strikes a coin, raised lines appear on the finished piece. While these lines may look like damage to an untrained eye, experienced collectors recognize them as genuine mint errors that can increase the coin's value. There are also reports of doubled die varieties, where parts of the design appear slightly doubled because of a misalignment during the die creation process. These can be subtle and often require magnification to see clearly. So how much could a 1997 D penny actually be worth? For most circulated examples, the value is still just 1 cent. Coins that have been used heavily in everyday transactions usually do not carry additional collector value. However, condition changes everything. Coins are graded on a scale that measures how well preserved they are. A coin that has never been used in circulation and still shows its original mint shine is called mint state. High-grade examples of the 1997 D penny, especially those graded MS66 or MS67, can sell for much more than face value. Some certified high-grade coins have sold for around $50 to several $100 depending on their quality and eye appeal. Error coins can sell for even more. Off-center strikes, strong double dies, or dramatic mint mistakes have sometimes reached prices ranging from $100 to several $100s in collector markets. This is why many collectors carefully examine rolls of pennies from banks or old family collections. Even modern coins can hold hidden surprises. But with valuable coins comes another important topic: authentication. If you believe you found a valuable 1997 D penny, the first step is to examine the mint mark carefully. The small D under the date should be clear and properly shaped. On genuine coins, the mint mark is part of the die itself, not added later. Collectors also check the weight of the coin. A standard 1997 penny weighs about 2.5 grams. A scale that measures in grams can quickly help confirm whether the coin falls within the expected range. Magnification is another useful tool. A small coin loop allows collectors to look closely at the lettering, surfaces, and potential doubling on the design. Professional grading services can also authenticate and grade coins, sealing them inside protective holders that confirm their condition and authenticity. Now here's a fun detail that surprises many people about the Lincoln Memorial penny. If you look closely at the reverse of the coin, you can see Lincoln not once, but twice. His portrait appears on the front of the coin, and a tiny image of his statue sits inside the Lincoln Memorial on the back. That means Lincoln is actually shown 2 times on the same coin. This clever design detail remained part of the penny for nearly half a century. Another interesting fact is how widely these coins traveled. Because the Denver Mint produced billions of them, 1997 D pennies circulated across the entire United States. Even today, it's still possible to find them in everyday pocket change. Many collectors remember the excitement of discovering their first high-grade coin from circulation. Sometimes it comes from a simple moment, checking the coins from a grocery store purchase or sorting through a jar that has been sitting untouched for years. And that sense of discovery is exactly why coins like the 1997 D penny remain fascinating. They remind us that history isn't always locked behind museum glass. Sometimes it's hiding in plain sight, quietly passing from hand to hand for decades. For collectors, the 1997 D Lincoln penny represents a perfect entry point into modern coin collecting. It's common enough to find, but interesting enough to study. And every now and then, one appears with a condition or error that transforms it from ordinary pocket change into a collectible treasure. Even more importantly, coins like this connect everyday life with the larger story of American history, the legacy of Abraham Lincoln, the artistry of the engravers who designed the coin, and the massive production efforts of the United States Mint. So the next time you receive a handful of change, pause for a moment before dropping those pennies into a jar. Take a closer look at the dates. Check the mint marks. Examine the surfaces. Because hidden among billions of ordinary coins, there is always the possibility that one small piece of copper-colored metal could hold a story, an error, or a condition that collectors are still searching for. And that humble 1997 D Lincoln penny might just be one of them. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a single penny, and almost tossing it aside without a second thought. Now imagine that the same little coin could quietly hold a story worth hundreds of dollars to the right collector. It might look ordinary. It might even feel ordinary. But sometimes the most common coins hide the most surprising secrets. And today, we're uncovering the story behind one of those coins. The 1998 Lincoln penny with no mint marked. At first glance, the 1998 penny seems completely normal. It's the familiar copper-colored coin most Americans have handled thousands of times. On the front, you see the portrait of President Abraham Lincoln, a design that has appeared on the 1-cent coin since 1909. Above his head is the word Liberty, and the year 1998 sits to the right of his image. But if you look carefully, something appears to be missing. There's no mint mark. For many people, that detail immediately raises questions. Was it an error? Was something forgotten during production? Or could it actually make the coin rare? To understand that, we need to go back a bit and look at how pennies are made and why mint marks exist in the first place. In the United States, coins are produced at several different mint facilities. The most well-known are located in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. To help collectors and the public identify where a coin was produced, most coins carry a small letter called a mint mark. A D represents Denver. An S represents San Francisco. But for many years, coins made in Philadelphia traditionally carried no mint mark at all. That's exactly what happened with the 1998 penny. If your coin shows the date 1998 but no small letter beneath it, that simply means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. And Philadelphia produced a lot of them. In fact, more than 5 billion Lincoln cents were struck in Philadelphia in 1998. Because of that massive number, the typical 1998 penny without a mint mark is still considered a common coin today. Most examples in circulated condition are only worth 1 cent, but here's where the story becomes interesting. Even though billions were made, a small number of 1998 pennies were struck with a subtle design difference that collectors love to search for. It's a variety that hides on the back of the coin, and many people never notice it unless they know exactly what to look for. Turn the coin over, and you'll see the Lincoln Memorial Building on the reverse. This design was introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. At the top of the coin are the words United States of America, and beneath that appears the motto E pluribus unum. At the bottom, you'll see the denomination 1 cent. Now focus on the letters A and M in the word America. On most 1998 pennies, those two letters sit very close together. Collectors call this the close AM design. But a small number of coins were accidentally struck using a different reverse design, one that was normally reserved for proof coins. On those coins, the A and M are clearly separated, with visible space between them. This is known as the wide AM variety. That small difference, just a tiny gap between two letters, is enough to transform an ordinary penny into a collectible discovery. So how did this happen? During coin production, the United States Mint uses metal dies to stamp designs onto blank coins. Sometimes dies from different coin programs get mixed up. In the late 1990s, proof coins produced in San Francisco used a slightly different reverse design where the A and M were spaced farther apart. Somehow, a few of those proof-style reverse dies were used to strike regular circulation pennies in Philadelphia. The result was the 1998 wide AM penny. And because these coins were released directly into circulation, they ended up mixed in with millions of normal pennies. People spent them, banks rolled them, and most of them went unnoticed. It wasn't until sharp-eyed collectors started examining their coins under magnification that the variety was discovered. Today, the 1998 wide AM penny has become one of the most famous modern Lincoln cent varieties. It isn't extremely rare compared to classic coins, but it's rare enough that collectors actively search for it in rolls of pennies. And the value difference can be dramatic. A normal circulated 1998 penny might be worth just 1 cent. But a confirmed 1998 wide AM penny in decent condition can sell for anywhere from $20 to over $100. Depending on its quality. Higher grade examples can be even more impressive. Coins graded in near-perfect mint state by professional grading services have sold for several $100s. In some cases, pristine examples have crossed the $1,000 mark at auction when collectors compete for the best-known specimens. All of that value comes from a detail that most people would never notice without guidance. So how can you tell if your 1998 penny might be the valuable wide AM variety? The first step is simple. Turn the coin over and examine the word America under magnification. A basic magnifying glass or even a smartphone camera can help. Look closely at the letters A and M. If the two letters almost touch or appear extremely close together, then you have the standard close AM design, which is very common. But if you see a clear gap between the A and the M, that's the wide AM variety collectors are hunting for. There's another small detail that experts use to confirm authenticity. On the wide AM variety, the letters FG, which represent the initials of the coin's designer Frank Gasparo, appear slightly farther from the Lincoln Memorial Building than on normal coins. These tiny design differences help specialists verify that the coin truly came from the proof reverse die. Of course, whenever money is involved, the possibility of mistakes and misidentification exists. Lighting, wear, and camera angles can make letters appear closer or farther apart than they actually are. That's why serious collectors often send potential discoveries to professional grading services for authentication. But the exciting part is that many wide AM pennies were originally found in everyday pocket change. Collectors discovered them while searching through rolls of pennies from banks, examining coins that had already circulated for years. That means there's always a chance that more examples are still out there, hiding among ordinary coins. And that possibility is exactly what makes coin collecting so thrilling. Imagine sitting at a table with a small pile of pennies, slowly turning each one over and checking the spacing of two tiny letters. 99 coins might be completely normal, but the 100th coin could reveal that distinctive wide spacing, the little clue that turns a 1-cent coin into something far more interesting. There are also a few fun details about the Lincoln penny that many people don't realize. For example, if you look very closely at the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse of older pennies, you can actually see the tiny statue of Abraham Lincoln sitting inside the building. That means Lincoln appears on both sides of the coin, his portrait on the front and his statue on the back. It's one of the few coins in the world where the same historical figure appears twice. Another interesting fact is that the metal composition of the penny changed years before 1998. Earlier pennies were mostly copper, but by the time the 1998 coins were produced, the cent was made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. This change happened in 1982 when rising copper prices made the old composition too expensive. Despite being made from inexpensive materials, pennies still carry enormous historical and cultural value. Collectors love them because they connect everyday people to the story of American history, from the presidency of Abraham Lincoln to the modern era of minting technology. And the 1998 wide AM variety perfectly represents that connection between ordinary money and unexpected discovery. It reminds us that valuable coins aren't always ancient or made of precious metals. Sometimes they're modern coins hiding in plain sight. The next time you receive change at a store or empty coins from a jar at home, take a closer look before you spend them. That ordinary penny might carry a small detail that most people overlook. And if you happen to find a 1998 penny with that unmistakable wide spacing between the A and the M in America, you may be holding one of the most famous modern Lincoln cent varieties ever discovered. A tiny gap between two letters. A coin worth far more than 1 cent. And a reminder that sometimes the smallest details can make the biggest difference. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing that the tiny coin in your hand might be worth far more than 1 cent. It sounds unbelievable, but for some collectors, certain modern pennies hide details that make them surprisingly valuable. One coin that has quietly captured attention over the years is the 2002 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, the 2002 penny looks like any other coin you might find in everyday change. It carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Millions of people have handled these coins without giving them a second thought. But for collectors and coin enthusiasts, even a small detail, like the presence or absence of a mint mark, can spark curiosity and raise an important question. Could this ordinary-looking penny be worth more than its face value? The 2002 Lincoln penny belongs to the long-running Lincoln cent series that began in 1909. This series was first introduced to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Since then, the Lincoln penny has become one of the most recognizable coins in American history. Over the decades, billions of these pennies have been produced, each carrying the same basic design but often with small variations that collectors love to study. By the year 2002, the Lincoln Memorial design had already been used on the back of the penny for more than 40 years. The front of the coin features the well-known portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing to the right, along with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, Liberty on the left side, and the year 2002 on the right. The reverse shows the Lincoln Memorial Building in Washington, D.C., with the words United States of America and E Pluribus Unum, along with the denomination 1 cent. Now here is where things become interesting. In 2002, pennies were produced at more than one mint facility in the United States. Coins struck in Denver carry a small D mint mark, but pennies struck in Philadelphia traditionally had no mint mark at all. That means if you see a 2002 penny without a mint mark under the date, it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. For many years, collectors did not pay much attention to modern Philadelphia pennies without mint marks because they were produced in very large numbers. In fact, billions of pennies were made in 2002. However, as time passed, collectors began to notice that certain examples of the 2002 no mint mark penny stood out from the rest due to unusual details, striking quality, or rare minting errors. The composition of the 2002 penny is another interesting detail. Like most modern pennies made after 1982, the coin is primarily composed of zinc with a thin copper plating on the outside. This gives the coin its familiar copper color while keeping production costs lower. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and measures roughly 19 millimeters in diameter. Even though the design remained consistent, the minting process can sometimes produce small imperfections. These imperfections, known as mint errors, are often what turn a common coin into something collectors eagerly search for. With the 2002 no mint mark penny, several types of errors have been reported by collectors over the years. One example is the double die effect, where parts of the design appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. When this happens, letters or numbers may look thicker or show a shadow-like duplication. While not extremely common, coins with noticeable doubling can attract strong interest from collectors. Another possible error involves off-center strikes. This occurs when the blank coin planchet is not perfectly aligned during the striking process. The result is a coin where part of the design is missing, leaving a blank crescent-shaped area. Off-center coins are visually striking and often sell for higher prices depending on how dramatic the error is. There are also cases where the copper plating on modern pennies separates or bubbles during production. This can create unusual textures or peeling effects on the coin's surface. While some of these issues are simply damage from circulation, genuine minting errors can increase the coin's appeal among collectors. So, how valuable can a 2002 no mint mark Lincoln penny actually be? The answer depends greatly on condition and whether the coin has any special characteristics. Most circulated examples are still worth only 1 cent. However, coins in exceptional condition, especially those graded as nearly perfect by professional grading services, can sell for significantly more. For example, uncirculated 2002 no mint mark pennies with sharp details and bright original surfaces have sold for several dollars to several dozen dollars depending on the grade. Coins graded at the very top of the scale, sometimes called mint state 67 or higher, can reach even stronger prices among dedicated collectors who compete for the finest known examples. When a rare mint error is involved, the value can climb much higher. Certain dramatic error coins from this year have sold for hundreds of dollars at auction. Collectors are particularly drawn to examples with clear doubling, strong off-center strikes, or unusual surface features that can be traced back to the minting process rather than post-mint damage. Because modern coins are so common, finding one in pristine condition can actually be more difficult than many people expect. Most pennies enter circulation immediately and quickly pick up scratches, discoloration, and wear. That means truly flawless examples from everyday pocket change are surprisingly rare. If you are curious about whether your 2002 penny might be worth something, there are a few simple steps collectors usually follow. First, examine the area under the date on the front of the coin. If there is no small letter beneath the year, the coin was produced in Philadelphia and is considered a no-mint mark example. Next, look carefully at the condition of the coin. Coins with strong luster, crisp details, and minimal marks tend to be the most desirable. A magnifying glass can also help you check for unusual features such as doubling in the lettering or unusual strike patterns. It is also important to remember that many coins that appear unusual are simply damaged after leaving the mint. Scratches, dents, and environmental damage are common on circulating pennies and usually do not add value. True mint errors typically show consistent patterns that match known production mistakes. Professional coin grading services can help confirm whether a coin is genuine and assign it an official grade. While not every penny needs professional grading, collectors sometimes choose this option for coins they believe might be especially rare or valuable. Another surprising fact about the 2002 Lincoln penny is just how many people overlook it. Because it is a modern coin and extremely common in circulation, it rarely attracts the same attention as older coins from the early 1900s. Yet this is exactly what makes the search exciting for collectors. Coin collecting often rewards patience and curiosity. Many valuable coins have been discovered in everyday change jars, old piggy banks, or forgotten coin rolls from the bank. Even if the odds are small, the possibility of finding something special keeps collectors searching. The Lincoln penny itself holds a special place in American history. For more than a century, it has passed through countless hands, witnessing generations of everyday life. From the earliest bronze cents of the early 20th century to modern copper-plated coins like the 2002 penny, each one carries a small piece of that history. Collectors also appreciate how the Lincoln penny design connects art, history, and technology. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln was the first time a real historical figure appeared on a circulating American coin. Before that, most U.S. coins featured symbolic images such as Lady Liberty. Even the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse side was carefully designed. If you look closely at the building on the back of the coin, you can actually see a tiny image of Lincoln's statue sitting inside the memorial. This level of detail is remarkable considering the small size of the penny. Today, the 2002 no-mint mark Lincoln penny remains a reminder that valuable discoveries can still be hiding in ordinary places. While most examples are common, certain high-grade coins and mint error varieties continue to attract collectors who enjoy the challenge of finding something unique. The next time you receive a handful of change, take a moment to look more closely at the pennies. Check the dates, study the details, and notice the small differences that most people ignore. That simple habit is how many collectors begin their journey. Because sometimes, the most ordinary coin can turn into the most interesting story. And somewhere out there, another overlooked penny might still be waiting to surprise the person who decides to take a second look. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing that this tiny copper-colored coin might actually be more interesting than you ever imagined. Most people overlook pennies. They drop them in jars, leave them in drawers, or spend them without a second thought. But sometimes, an ordinary-looking coin hides a fascinating story. And today, we're exploring one of those coins, the 2006 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, the 2006 penny looks completely normal. It has the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Millions of these coins were produced, and many are still circulating today. But collectors know that even modern pennies can carry details, variations, and hidden value that most people never notice. The 2006 Lincoln penny belongs to a long-running series of coins that began in 1909. That year marked the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and the United States introduced a new 1-cent coin to honor him. It became the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. Since then, the Lincoln cent has remained one of the most recognizable coins in American history. By the year 2006, the Lincoln penny had already been in circulation for nearly a century. The design still featured Lincoln's profile on the front, originally created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. On the reverse side, the Lincoln Memorial design had been used since 1959, replacing the earlier wheat ears design that collectors now call the wheat penny. In 2006, pennies were produced at several United States mint facilities. The two main mints responsible for producing Lincoln cents were Philadelphia and Denver. Coins produced in Denver carry a small D mint mark under the date on the front of the coin, but coins made in Philadelphia traditionally have no mint mark at all. That's exactly what the 2006 no mint mark penny is. It was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, which has been one of the main coin production centers in the United States for more than 2 centuries. Because Philadelphia coins often carry no mint mark, millions of Americans unknowingly handle them every day. Now you might be wondering how a coin produced in such large numbers could attract the attention of collectors. After all, billions of pennies were minted in 2006. But coin collecting has always been about more than just age or mintage numbers. Sometimes it's about small variations, errors, or exceptional condition. The 2006 Lincoln penny is made mostly of zinc, with a thin outer layer of copper. This composition has been used for U.S. pennies since 1982. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and measures 19 millimeters across. To the average person, it feels exactly like any other modern penny. But collectors look much closer. On the front of the coin, Lincoln's portrait faces to the right. Above his head are the words, "In God we trust." To the left of his portrait is the word liberty. And below the year 2006, you'll notice something interesting on Philadelphia coins. There is no mint mark at all on the reverse side. The Lincoln Memorial stands proudly in the center. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny representation of the Lincoln statue inside the memorial building. Around the top edge are the words United States of America. And below the memorial is the denomination 1 cent. For collectors, the excitement begins when small differences appear in these familiar designs. Some 2006 pennies show minor minting errors. These errors can occur during the coin production process when the dies strike the metal blanks. For example, some collectors have discovered coins with doubled letters, slightly off-center designs, or die cracks. While these mistakes might look small, they can make a coin far more interesting to a collector. Another factor that can make a 2006 no mint mark penny valuable is condition. Most pennies spend years moving through cash registers, pockets, and coin jars. Over time, they become scratched, worn, and dull. But occasionally, a coin survives in nearly perfect condition. Collectors call these coins uncirculated or mint state. A coin that looks almost exactly as it did the day it was struck can be far more valuable than one that has been heavily used. For example, a typical 2006 penny found in circulation is usually worth exactly 1 cent. But if that same coin is preserved in high mint state condition, its value can increase dramatically among collectors. Professional grading services examine coins under magnification and assign them a grade. The highest grades are given to coins that show almost no signs of wear. In some cases, a 2006 no mint mark Lincoln penny graded at the very top levels can sell for many dollars, and occasionally much more depending on rarity and demand. There have even been auction examples where specially preserved 2006 pennies sold for prices that surprise people who normally ignore small coins. High-grade examples certified by professional grading companies have sold for dozens or even over $100 in certain collector markets. While that might not sound like millions, it is still remarkable when you consider